Hello, everyone. Well, the dreaded double tap attacks are back. In this case, it was in a small town near Kharkiv in the Kharkiv region. If any of you are Hunger Games fans, the double tap attack is very much like what you see in the last book or in the last Hunger Games movie, where an attack takes place, the rescue workers come rushing in, and then another attack comes, finishing off both the survivors and the rescue workers. Russians have been using those extensively against Ukrainian civilians, having seen how promptly the rescue workers try to make it onto the scene. Obviously, time is of the essence, especially if you have people potentially trapped under the rubble. So this is one of the worst and most underhanded things that they have been doing against Ukrainian civilians, and it is completely heartbreaking. So far that we know of, 25 people were injured in this particular attack, including 2 children. But since this was very recent, we're probably going to hear more. Minister of Interior Klimenko said that the head of the Kharkiv district emergency services was killed, along with a police officer from the rapid response unit. So, like I said, these are just horrible. There's no way to describe it. And as per usual, Kremlin continues its saber-rattling, saying that positioning long-range missiles on its bases in Europe makes the locations of the U.S. bases targets. So not just the bases themselves, but the countries and the cities where they're located. So they're basically looking for excuses to hit European cities and then claim self-defense. Nothing new there. This is interesting. So from what I can see, the UK is actually still dawdling on its permission to use UK missiles for Ukrainians to strike military targets inside Russia. I apologize if I provided contradicting information, because that's the information I'm getting, and different sources are saying the different things. So I'm like, UK, what the hell? Get your friggin' act together. It appears that US may have lifted the restriction on that. So let's just wait and see what this means. But looking at this piece, and again, specifically, this piece isn't from CNN. CNN is not my favorite source. They are very biased. They tend to jump all over the headlines instead of substance. So let's treat this as a developing story. But what they're saying is basically what the discussion has been going on this entire time. So, as we said before, Russia has been successfully attacking Ukraine's border regions by positioning its long-range missiles just alongside its own border, just there, so just outside of Ukrainian territory. And because Ukrainians were not allowed to hit those, they had no way to defend themselves against those. So now, if the restrictions are truly lifted, and again, we're still verifying that, so nobody freak out, that will enable them to be proactive and hopefully prevent those dreaded double tap attacks that we were just talking about. So this particular piece talks about the fact that it is already working, and they were already able to hit some targets that were, just there, just out of reach. And it's good to hear, they're saying that finally, what we've been asking for a very long time, for months and possibly over a year, we're starting to see regular deliveries. We're starting to see some kind of schedule. We're starting to see the aid coming in a way that we can actually count on. And that is awesome. So, and they're seeing the impact of that. They finally have a chance to really put up a decent defense. And, like I said, be proactive by targeting what they can find, what Russian military objects they can find that have been just out of reach for them. So hopefully we'll see more of this. This is from Associated Press. Doesn't surprise me. So I know about this because I read Russian media as much as it makes me want to puke. But I do read them. And so here is the thing. It's not that there's suddenly more spies and traitors in Russia. It's how the laws have changed with the advent of the war in Ukraine that made more activities candidates for the accusations of treason and espionage. Basically, it's anything that disagrees with the government at this point. This is very Soviet, very Stalin, I mentioned before, going back over a year, that parents were arrested and fined, sometimes fired from their jobs when their children drew anti-war pictures in kindergarten. People have been arrested for wearing Ukrainian colors, like blue and yellow together. People have been arrested and interrogated for any kind of statement that questions the wisdom of waging this war. So this describes it. If you slide down, in 2022, Putin urged the security services to harshly suppress the actions of foreign intelligence services, promptly identify traitors, spies, and saboteurs. That is pretty sweeping. Because as of right now, it's very much like anybody could point at anybody and say that person is a spy. And presumption of guilt pretty much rules. Finally, for those of you who are the scholars of history, the Institute for the Study of War has its next report about the war in Ukraine. Just came out. It's, piping hot, just out of the oven. So if you're into that type of thing, if you study this subject, definitely check it out. It's long, I'm telling you right away. And it talks much about what we have already discussed, and is trying to make predictions as to how long it might take Ukraine to actively switch from the defensive stance to the offensive stance. They're predicting 6 months, so they're saying this is probably not going to happen until 2025, and that is with the assumption of consistently provided aid. Ukraine has been known to surprise experts, so we will see. Meanwhile, as usual, they provide their excellent maps. Definitely visit that. And, this is the overall, but they do provide the extreme close-ups of specific regions if you want to know what is going on there. And once again, one of the things that gives me hope are the purple spots in the occupied areas. Those are the pockets of resistance. Again, all of us covering these events in Ukraine have been saying Ukrainian people are not going to take this lying down, and those pockets of resistance are proof.